I'm Lou.
And I'm Kate, and today we have a special podcast for everybody at home.
Covering the events of the Cold War from 1953 to 1961.
To start off, let's talk about the creation of the CIA. The CIA was created in 1947 from the Central Intelligence Group, or the CIG, to operate independently of the military and State Department. President Truman established it through the National Security Act, tasking it with coordinating intelligence, collecting, evaluating, and sharing national security information. During the Cold War, the CIA engaged in espionage, gathered foreign intelligence, and conducted covert operations to counter Soviet-allied governments.
Thanks, Kate. Relating to the CIA is the U.S.-led coup in Iran in 1953. For decades, the British had controlled Iranian oil, so in 1951, Iranian Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh nationalized the Iran oil industry. U.S. petroleum companies also had major investments in oil countries in the Middle East, so when they heard Iran was resisting the presence of Western corporations, the American CIA orchestrated a coup to overthrow the Prime Minister. The coup was successful, and the Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi rose to power and kept close relations with the U.S. for the next 25 years. This coup demonstrated the lengths the U.S. is willing to go to protect their own economic interests.
Next, let's talk about another significant event that occurred in 1954. In 1954, the CIA armed, funded, and trained approximately 480 men led by Carlos Castillo armies. After isolating Guatemala diplomatically, his forces invaded on June 18th, supported by psychological warfare, air bombings, and a naval blockade. The coup, driven by U.S. strategic interests, was based on exaggerated fears of communist influence. Diego Rivera's painting Gloriosa Victoria depicts the event, showing armies greeting Secretary of State John Foster Dulles, who holds a bomb of Eisenhower's face, surrounded by victims of the coup. Turning it over to Lily on the USSR invasion of Hungary.
In 1956, the Hungarian people attempted a revolution demanding democratic reform, but the revolution was short-lived as Russian forces quickly swept in to crush the uprising, and because the Eisenhower administration refused to intervene. The U.S.'s cautious response was mainly because they were focused on the Suez crisis in Egypt, and they decided to focus their efforts there. They didn't want to send troops or nuclear weapons because it could have dragged the conflict out longer. Happening at the same time was the Suez crisis in 1956, which started when the leader of Egypt, General Nasser, began to develop trade relations with the Soviet Union. In punishment, the U.S. withdrew their offers of assistance to help build Egypt's Aswan Dam across the Nile River. Egypt then retaliated by nationalizing their Suez Canal, which had been under British and French control since its construction. Israel also wanted control of surrounding territory, so Israel, Britain, and France created a joint plan of attack to invade Egypt. Israeli forces, combined with British and French troops, landed in the Suez Canal, intending to drive the Egyptians out. But Eisenhower and Dulles feared that this conflict would drive Arab states to the Soviet Union and create a new world war. So the U.S. refused to support the invasion and even joined a UN denunciation of it, which pressured Britain and France to withdraw and persuaded Israel to create a truce with Egypt. After the Suez crisis, the U.S. was worried about British military and political power in the Middle East, which led to the creation of the Eisenhower Doctrine in 1957, which provided U.S. administration with increased power to aid countries in the Middle East. I'll pass it over to Kate now.
Thanks, Lily. Let's talk more space. On October 4th, 1957, the Soviet Union made history with the launch of Sputnik I, the world's first artificial satellite to orbit Earth. Transmitting a simple radio signal around the globe, Sputnik sent shockwaves through the international community and ignited the space race between the U.S. and the USSR. Furthermore, the U.S. and the Soviet Union fiercely competed to develop cutting-edge space technology, focusing on missiles and rocketry to showcase their dominance. What began as a technological showdown soon became a race to the moon, one the U.S. ultimately won in 1969 when astronaut Neil Armstrong took mankind's historic first steps toward the moon. Cold War tensions took center stage in 1959. In a heated exchange known as the Kitchen Debate, Vice President Richard Nixon and Soviet Premier Nikita Khrushchev sparred over capitalism and communism inside a model American home. Nixon showcased U.S. consumer technology as proof of superiority, while Khrushchev dismissed the need for such luxuries, insisting Soviet products were just as good. More than just a debate, this moment signaled a shift in the Cold War, less about military threats and more about winning global influence. Back to you, Lily.
Next is the U-2 incident in 1960. With concerns about nuclear weapons increasing between the Soviet Union and the U.S. created the U-2 spy plane in 1957 to verify Soviet claims about nuclear development. A few years later, Nikita Khrushchev, the Soviet premier, suggested that he and Eisenhower meet in a Paris summit meeting to discuss important issues and to relax tensions. Days before the Paris summit meeting, however, the Soviet Union announced it had shot down the U-2 plane. Eisenhower's refusal to apologize for the spy plane led to the Soviets leaving Paris right before the summit meeting. This incident was a missed opportunity to decrease tensions between the USSR and the U.S. and only increase tensions between the two countries.
Lastly, in his 1961 farewell address, Eisenhower gave a stark warning to the country and cautioned against the growing power of the military-industrial complex, warning that it could corrupt government and gain undue influence. He feared rising military spending and militarism could lead to unchecked power and a greater risk of war. Eisenhower urged Americans to remain vigilant, warning that national security should never come at the cost of democracy, a message that still resonates today.
And that's the big picture of the Cold War for today. In the 1950s, the U.S. and the Soviet Union were in a fierce battle for global power. Whether through military actions, political moves, or space missions, both countries tried to prove they were the most powerful. The U.S. led coups in countries like Iran, while the USSR invaded Hungary and took a stand in the Suez Crisis.
The Cold War wasn't just about fighting, it was about showing who had the best ideas and who could lead the world. This era shaped history and still impacts us today. That concludes today's special broadcast. We'll see you tomorrow.